There's something sacred about a grandmother's house. The smell, the silence, the weight of generations in old floorboards. You don't inherit a home like that, you inherit a legacy with responsibilities. That's what I felt 3 months ago when I signed deployment papers and left my abuela's house, keys in my sister's hand and hope in my heart. Her name was Rosa Rodriguez, fierce, faithful, 5 feet of pure firepower who raised 2 kids, 3 grandkids, and ran her own tamale business out of that kitchen for 40 years. Grandma Rosa didn't just pay off that house with cash. She ruled that neighborhood with kindness and homemade tortillas. That house was supposed to be our anchor. It was the last piece of family we had left. Maya, my little sister, a school teacher with a good heart and nerves like string, promised to keep everything stable while I left for overseas active duty with the Federal Drug Task Force. I trusted her with everything. I never imagined what she'd be up against alone. At 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, 8,000 miles from home, I was jolted awake by a phone call full of sobs and panic. Maya, screaming into the mic. "Tank, she's cutting the lock. She brought bolt cutters. Tank, Bethany's trying to take your Jeep." My heart stopped. My Jeep wasn't just a ride. It was a law enforcement registered surveillance unit, task force issued, federally outfitted, full of encrypted tech and active drug case intel. What that HOA president didn't know was that she was cutting into something more dangerous than a parking violation. She was committing a federal felony. But before we dive deeper into this unforgettable video, make sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon. That way, you'll never miss any new coming videos like this. Now, let's get back to it. Her name was Bethany Kensington Wright, HOA president of Willowbrook Estates. 5'7", Botox smile, real estate license with 0 soul. Drives a white Lexus, jogs in Lululemon, and believes Jesus and property values are her personal commandments. When I first heard the name, it was an email. Violation notice 2045*. Improper vehicle storage visible from street. Apparently, my Jeep was an unauthorized commercial vehicle, despite being legally exempt under HOA guidelines. Something Maya would later discover buried deep in the original 1987 HOA bylaws. She didn't care that the Jeep had *** federal law enforcement, vehicle *** decals. She didn't care that I was on deployment. She didn't even care that Maya showed her my official deployment orders. All that mattered to Bethany was keeping the military eyesore out of her beige little fairy tale neighborhood. And just like that, we were in a war. Except this battlefield had no sand, no gunfire, no insurgents. Just smiles with knives behind them, and a clipboard full of fake violations. Maya called me crying the first time she tried reasoning with her. "Tank," she looked at me like I didn't belong here, like Grandma's house was infected. Bethany told her, with that voice sweet as vinegar, "If your brother can't follow community standards, perhaps your family should consider relocating." That was her way of saying, y'all don't belong here. But we did. More than she ever would. See, Bethany hadn't just crossed a line when she cited my Jeep. She declared war on a federal agent while I was 8,000 miles away tracking cartel affiliates. And when you're trained to dismantle criminal organizations for a living, an HOA board playing dictator doesn't scare you. But what rattled me, what made this personal, was what it was doing to Maya. The stress, the isolation, the humiliation. No backup, no protection, just her and Grandma's ghost keeping watch. And Bethany, emboldened with fake power and her city council husband, thought she'd found an easy target. She had no idea she was picking a fight with someone trained to take down empires a dozen cartels deep. But I wasn't home. I couldn't knock on her door. So I did what soldiers and agents always do. I sent out recon. And Maya. She was about to become the quiet hero of this entire story. Absolutely. Here's *** part 2 *** of your cinematic script for HOA Karen cut my lock to snatch my Jeep. Didn't know it belonged to a police task force. Like before, this is a clean *** voiceover-ready script ***. No part headings, pure cinematic storytelling, and approximately *700 words. Let's continue the pressure as Maya uncovers how deep Bethany's HOA tyranny really goes. I didn't hear from Maya for 2 days after the violation notice. Deployment had me in blackout mode, wrapped in camo netting, chasing heat signatures across mountain terrain. But when her next voice message came through, it didn't sound like my sister anymore. "Tank, she's threatening me now." Her voice shook, the sound of shuffling papers in the background, her trying to keep it together. She said, if I keep interfering with HOA business, she'd talk to the school board. That's how HOA bullies operate. They don't flex muscle. They flex network. And Bethany's husband, Carl Wright, was on the city council, head of the zoning committee and friendly with half the school administrators in our district. They weren't just pushing some parking citation. They were building a box around my sister's life, brick by bureaucratic brick. Maya sat in that kitchen, the same one Grandma Rosa fed us tamales and life advice in, wondering if she'd lose the roof over her head, her job, and our family's last legacy. All because of my Jeep. A beige, HOA-perfect suburban world can make anyone feel small. But if you've ever met a teacher on a mission, you know they don't stay scared for long. Maya started digging. She found the original HOA documents signed when Grandma purchased the house. Tucked in dusty plastic binders, hidden like buried treasure, were bylaws printed and notarized back in 1987. And in all caps under ** section 14.3. * government vehicles, military, law enforcement, and emergency service vehicles are exempt and protected from enforcement action while actively registered. She read it 3 times. She wasn't just being harassed. Bethany was violating the very rules she claimed to protect. Fabricated fines, fake authority, ego masking as governance, and it was all backed by an infrastructure of neighbors too scared to speak up. But this wasn't an isolated case. She called the Johnsons down the block. Marine Corps, retired, had been fined $75 for non-compliant motorcycle storage. Then the Washingtons, Navy wife, 2 kids. HOA cited them for visible children's toys degrading curb appeal. The Martinez family, Army Reserves, garden gnomes called unprofessional decorations, fined, harassed, ignored. It wasn't enforcement, it was a pattern. A pattern of targeting military families in one suburban pocket at a time. A war made of letters, citations, and whispers behind hedges. And Bethany, she didn't just know about it, she was orchestrating it. The notices stacked in Maya's hands like paper bullets. I could hear it in her voice when she called back that night. She was done being scared. "Tank, this woman's not trying to keep our community beautiful. She's trying to erase anyone who doesn't fit her mold." Maya had become what I'd hoped she never had to, a soldier in a different kind of war. So I gave her a mission. Document everything. Every notice. Every neighbor story. Every HOA bylaw discrepancy. Every threat, every call, every incident. She wasn't just filing papers anymore. She was building an ops file, a war chest. And that's when she found it. Buried in an archive of HOA meeting minutes, scanned PDFs on Grandma's ancient desktop. She opened notes from a closed meeting in April of 2019, labeled Community Improvement Initiative Planning. It included a letter from Bethany herself, addressed to the City Planning Commission, advising against any military housing grants or service member community programs in Willowbrook. Quote, transient military populations have little long-term community investment and lower property value retention. Translation: they didn't want us living there. They didn't want veterans, or Marines, or Army, or you serving your country while parking in front of their perfect flower beds. Bethany Kensington Wright had made it her mission to push us out, paper by paper. And now, without realizing it, she'd pushed too far. What she didn't know was that my training wasn't just combat. It was federal law, RICO, mail fraud, civil rights, task force structure. Maya wasn't collecting notes. She was collecting evidence. Bethany wasn't running an HOA anymore. She was heading an organized campaign of federally protected discrimination. And my sister, my timid, sweet middle school teaching sister, she was about to bring down a suburban empire, one fabricated violation at a time. Maya didn't sleep the night she uncovered that 2019 letter. She sat at Grandma's kitchen table until dawn, cataloging every violation notice like pieces in a jigsaw puzzle. By morning, she'd built a timeline. Each time a service member family moved into Willowbrook, a wave of citations followed within 3 weeks. Garden decor, vehicle size, lawn color, even porch flags called politically provocative. The pattern was so obvious once you looked for it that it felt like flashing neon, yet no one had ever joined the dots, because Bethany's biggest weapon wasn't paperwork. It was isolation. She made every target believe they were the only one. But Maya had broken the silence. Before breakfast, she was already on her second pot of coffee, emailing neighbors, inviting them for tea and truth. Most were hesitant. Some whispered thanks and hung up. A few brave souls showed up that evening armed with manila folders and weary smiles. Tom Henderson, Vietnam vet, set down a stack of yellowed citations for his son's Harley. Sarah Martinez brought photos of Bethany photographing her toddler's sandbox at 11 p.m. under Grandma's low kitchen light, the folders piled high, until the table looked like a crime scene command post. No one had ever seen the whole picture until now, and once they did, there was no unseeing it. Bethany, meanwhile, was busy tightening her grip. 2 days after Maya's impromptu summit, a registered letter appeared. Final notice, emergency vehicle removal required within 24 hours. Emergency, she wrote in red ink, citing neighborhood safety concerns. The envelope carbon copied the city council, police chief, and the school superintendent, Carl's friends. It read like a lawsuit wrapped around a threat. Move the Jeep or face immediate towing, escalating fines and potential liens against the property. Maya called me at 200 hours her time. I was still in a desert command post, sweat drying on combat gear. She tried to steady her voice, but I heard the tremor. Tank, the letter says a tow truck, scheduled for tomorrow morning, and Bethany mentioned my job again. That was the line, not tomorrow, not next week now. I asked headquarters for a legal assistance call window and got exactly 15 minutes on an encrypted line. I dialed JAG office stateside, still dust-covered and sleepless. Staff Sergeant Patricia Williams picked up. She read the notice once, and her silence spoke louder than shouting. "Rodriguez," she finally said, "this woman is planning to seize federal law enforcement property. That's a felony under 18 U.S.C. 641, plus obstruction of national security operations. We'll file immediately." Within an hour, Williams had drafted a cease and desist, citing the Service Members Civil Relief Act, slapped with a federal watermark Bethany couldn't ignore. But sending letters was one thing, stopping bolt cutters at dawn was another. I needed eyes on the ground, so I accessed the Jeep's onboard security, motion sensors, infrared auto video. The system pulsed to life, beaming a silent feed across 2 continents to my tablet. Grandma's driveway glowed green in night vision. I watched an empty street, waiting for trouble like it was another stakeout in cartel country. At 3 a.m., headlights crept up the boulevard. A white SUV idled opposite our house, ExecSafe Security, the logo said. Two men climbed out, flashlights sweeping. They weren't police. They weren't towing. They were casing the Jeep, photographing the decals, peering through tinted glass at antennas they didn't understand. One pointed, the other wrote notes. A private militia in polyester uniforms playing detective. Maya texted from her bedroom window, fingers shaking. "They're here, recording." She was supposed to be asleep for her morning classes, but heroism never clocks out. The feed captured the guards circling closer, then Bethany's unmistakable silhouette stepping from the shadows in silk pajamas and a trench coat, as if the night itself observed dress code. She whispered orders, gestured at my lock, tapped her watch. I toggled the Jeep's internal mic and broadcast a single recorded phrase, flat and metallic. "Unauthorized personnel step away from federal equipment. Activity is recorded and will be forwarded to Homeland Security." The guards jumped like they'd touched a live wire. Bethany's head snapped up, scanning for a speaker she couldn't see. She hissed something angry, her composure cracking. The trio retreated to the SUV and rolled off, but I knew they'd be back. People drunk on control never leave quietly. They reload. Meyer exhaled on the phone, half laugh, half sob. "Tank, that was your voice." "No," I said, "that was the law talking." By sunrise, she'd emailed the footage to Staff Sergeant Williams and Captain Sarah Chen, my task force supervisor. Chen replied with one sentence, "Let them keep digging their hole." The federal wheel had started turning, slow but unstoppable. School that day was brutal. Parents whispered in hallways. The rumor mill said Maya's brother was bringing military surveillance vans into a quiet community. Bethany's campaign was working. Fear spreads faster than truth. Yet when the final bell rang, a different kind of message was waiting in Maya's inbox. 15 RSVPs for another kitchen meeting, all from families who'd once felt alone. The isolation spell had broken. That night, Grandma's table hosted a dozen voices swapping stories, cross-checking dates, lining Bethany's paper bullets in chronological order. Each citation was a nail, every thread a plank, and together they built the gallows Bethany would soon hang her HOA crown on. Maya closed the binder and looked around the room. "We're not victims," she said, quiet but unshakable. "We're evidence." And evidence, once organized, becomes justice in waiting. The cease and desist arrived by certified mail at 10 the next morning. Maya signed, scanned it, and hand-delivered a copy to Bethany's mailbox, just in case the president of Willowbrook Estates suddenly forgot how to read. The letter was short, lethal, typed on Department of Defense stationery. Any attempt to remove, tamper with, or surveil the federally owned Jeep would be prosecuted under federal statutes. Simple, clear, final. Bethany read it on her porch while sipping something green from a mason jar. She didn't flinch. She just smiled, folded the paper into a neat square, and slid it into her purse like a dinner receipt. Power addicts don't respect threats until cuffs click, and she still believed her kingdom walls were taller than Washington, D.C. That night, the neighborhood group chat lit up with a new directive from the HOA board. Emergency community safety patrols begin immediately. Report suspicious military vehicles. The text dripped with faux concern, alleging heightened terror risks. Translation: she'd weaponized the neighbors. Suddenly, retirees with binoculars were patrolling sidewalks, jotting license plates, whispering about improvised explosives behind every truck badge. The paranoia smelled like gasoline, and Bethany kept flicking matches. By Thursday, Maya noticed unmarked sedans coasting the block at odd hours. Same tinted windows, same slow crawl. She turned Grandma's lace curtains into a watch post and logged each plate. We ran them through a friend at DMV, all leased by Morrison and Associates, the reputation-laundering PR firm Bethany loved. So the campaign had upgraded. Now it included private investigators building a dossier on a deployed soldier. The harassment accelerated in small, surgical cuts. An anonymous call to Child Protective Services claimed the Washingtons left their toddlers unattended near military equipment. A noise complaint accused Tom Henderson's oxygen machine of disturbing the peace. Letters, calls, visits, every hour another drip until nerves frayed. Bethany played maestro, conducting fear like an orchestra. But fear works both ways, because every incident went into Maya's growing case file: time, date, witness, photo, document. Evidence stacked higher than Bethany's collection of scented candles. And the more Bethany pushed, the deeper she dug her own hole. Friday at dawn, ExecSafe security returned. Same white SUV, different guards. They rolled out an orange traffic cone, blocked the street, and unfurled yellow tape labeled Community Hazard Assessment. Maya filmed from the porch as they whipped out laser rangefinders and started measuring the Jeep's wheelbase like it was radioactive. One guard produced a clipboard with tow authorization papers bearing a forged city seal. They were setting the stage. Build a fiction big enough and maybe the world believes it. Maya dialed the non-emergency police line. An officer arrived, glanced at the decals on the Jeep, read the cease and desist, and backed away like he'd found a snake in a mailbox. ExecSafe argued, voices rose, neighbors gathered, cameras flashed. The cop radioed a supervisor. 10 minutes later, the guards were ordered off the property for lack of authority. They left, fuming, but not before photographing every face in the crowd. Intimidation snapshots, another brick in the evidence wall. That afternoon, Bethany shifted tactics. She emailed the school superintendent accusing Maya of instigating civil unrest and harboring classified military hardware in a residential zone. The language was surgical. Hints of violence, safety buzzwords, nothing provably defamatory, just enough smoke to suggest fire. Maya was summoned to HR for a wellness conversation. She walked in armed with the cease and desist, deployment orders, and 4 character references from parents whose kids she'd tutored for free. HR thanked her, apologized, and quietly forwarded Bethany's email to district council. One step closer to defamation charges. Meanwhile, I was lacing up boots for a dawn op overseas, but every spare minute belonged to digital war. I set the Jeep's cameras to live stream to a secure cloud and handed credentials to Jag, the FBI liaison, and Captain Chen. If Bethany so much as breathed near the bumper, half of federal law enforcement would get a push notification. Saturday, the neighborhood woke to new signs on every lamp post. Special meeting, emergency vote on military vehicle ban. The flyer quoted Bethany, "Our children deserve safety, not intimidation." Beneath, in tiny print, she'd included a QR code linking to a video montage, tight zooms of the Jeep, ominous music, stock footage of explosions. Pure propaganda. But something shifted that day. Parents recognized the school playground in her fear reel. They recognized their own kids' laughter sliced into a horror clip. The exploitation nauseated them. RSVPs poured into Maya's inbox, this time siding with her. Bethany's tactics had crossed into cartoon villainy, and decent people finally saw it. That night, Maya's living room overflowed. Veterans, young couples, single moms, all holding HOA covenants and cups of coffee. They signed a petition for a recall election, needed 33%, got 52 before midnight. Tom Henderson slid the stack into a fire-safe bag. "Your grandma would be proud," he said, eyes glassy. "She taught this town how to fight decent." Before everyone left, Maya taped a fresh printout of the federal cease and desist on the Jeep's driver window. Beneath it, she posted the recall petition, 33 pages of signatures. A silent message. The community had chosen sides. Bethany saw it at sunrise on her power walk. Security footage caught her face twisting from disbelief to fury. She tore down the petition, crumpled it, and stormed off without noticing the tiny red light on the Jeep's mirror, quietly recording her meltdown. The war was no longer private. It was public, documented, and speeding toward a collision Bethany couldn't avoid. All she needed now was one more reckless move to seal her fate. And she was already sharpening the bolt cutters. Maya's phone pinged at 3:12 a.m. Motion alert. The driveway camera caught two silhouettes duck-walking along the hedge line, dark hoodies, handheld scanners sweeping for signals. She texted me a grainy still while I crouched under desert stars, prepping to breach a smuggler's compound. Even halfway around the planet, I could taste the metallic snap of adrenaline. I tapped into the live feed. One intruder probed the Jeep's grill, lifted a flap, then flashed a thumbs up to the other. They weren't amateurs, they were hunting for trackers. I muted the ops comms long enough to whisper instructions. Maya killed every light in the house, slipped onto the porch, and snapped a phone photo, flash on full blast. The men froze like raccoons. "You're trespassing on federal property," she called out, voice steady even while her knees wobbled. They bolted through manicured azaleas, dove into the same white exec-safe SUV, and roared away. Maya's timestamp, plates, and footage were on Captain Chen's desk before sunrise. At 900 hours, Chen looped in Special Agent Alvarez from DHS Cybercrimes. He verified the trespassers' scanners, black market spectrum analyzers used to detect encrypted transmitters. Translation: they were actively hunting federal surveillance devices, espionage, plain and simple. Alvarez's grin over video feed told me everything. They just crossed a line from HOA harassment into national security felony territory. Bethany was about to learn federal patience outlasts suburban tantrums. By lunch, Maya received her first subpoena, grand jury testimony request. The DOJ wanted every file she'd built: violation letters, meeting minutes, fake tow forms, even the stock footage fear video. She packaged it all into a thumb drive labeled HOA Karma and overnighted it. Evidence once boxed gains a gravity of its own. But Bethany didn't slow down. She doubled. That evening, she hosted a safety forum in the clubhouse. Her opening slide, my Jeep photos, watermarked with bold red text, military threat. She told parents the vehicle stored high-caliber weapons and unregulated spy tech, claimed Maya's recall petition was foreign disinformation. A retiree live-streamed the whole circus to Facebook. Within an hour, comment sections flooded with laughing emojis and veterans quoting the actual HOA exemption clause. Bethany tried to delete the video. The internet had already archived it. Carl panicked next. He convened an emergency city council subcommittee to address escalating veteran unrest. The meeting was public. Maya and half the neighborhood packed the chamber. She stood up, produced a pocket constitution, and read the Service Members' Civil Relief Act aloud, line by line. Local reporters ate it up. The headline next morning: Teacher SCHOOLS City Council on Federal Law. That same day, the FBI served ExecSafe with a preservation order for all body cam footage and dispatch logs. The company's lawyer sputtered something about privileged clients. The agent smiled, said espionage trumps privilege, and left them a business card stamped Counterintelligence Division. The pressure cooker whistled louder. Bethany slapped lien notices on 5 homes, every signer of the recall petition. The liens were bogus, filed without vote, but they scared people who'd never seen legalese. Maya organized a front porch meeting, walked each homeowner through the bylaws, and showed them where the signatures were forged. Fear flipped to fury. They added forgery to the complaint list. Saturday dawned with a fresh stunt. Orange stenciled graffiti across the Jeep windshield: "Get out, war freak." Maya found it at 6 a.m., hands trembling as she recorded evidence. She didn't cry. She grabbed a rag, wiped the paint, and kept filming. She understood now. Every crime was another sandbag on Bethany's sinking boat. I filed a crimes against federal property incident from the field. 20 minutes later, a U.S. Marshal phoned Maya, scheduled an on-site inspection, and advised her to expect enhanced presence. She didn't know what that meant until 3 unmarked SUVs rolled into Willowbrook at dusk, parking beneath the big oak like shadows with badges. Neighbors peered through blinds. Bethany peered through rage. Night drifted in, sticky and silent. At 11:47 p.m., the marshals left a GPS-tagged decoy laptop on the Jeep's passenger seat and retreated to a surveillance van. Bait. If Bethany or her minions opened the door, an alarm would ping every tower from Dallas to D.C. Maya texted me one word: ready. Sunday morning church traffic hadn't even started when Bethany made her move. Bathrobe, messy bun, bolt cutters glinting like fangs. The marshal's hidden camera live-streamed her hunching beside the lock, testing the chain. She glanced around, saw no witnesses, because they were all inside tinted glass 50 feet away, and positioned the cutters. The moment steel met steel, my phone vibrated with an encrypted push. Unauthorized access. Maya's vibrated too. She sprinted to the window, phone raised. I watched in real time as Bethany clenched, strained, and the first link snapped with a metallic bark that sliced through Sunday stillness. She lifted the padlock, smiling triumph, oblivious to the glowing red optics recording her every breath. 30 seconds, one lock. 30 more and she would haul open the gate. She never got the chance. Marshal Torres stepped out of the van, badge raised, voice like a hammer. "Ma'am, step away from that vehicle." Bethany dropped the cutters. For the first time since this started, her smile cracked into something wide and terrified. She managed a single sentence. "I'm the HOA president," before Torres read her the Miranda that would echo across every cul-de-sac in America by nightfall. The trap had sprung, and the next 24 hours would flood Willowbrook with a justice no sprinkler system could wash away. Bethany's shriek ricocheted off the tidy stucco walls as Marshal Torres cuffed her wrists. Neighbors cracked curtains, gasped, and fumbled for phones. For years, she'd patrolled these lawns like royalty. Now she stood barefoot on dew-wet grass, mascara racing toward her chin. A second marshal photographed the broken lock, the bolt cutters, the Jeep's glowing security panel still flashing federal alert. Evidence markers popped up like dandelions. Maya slipped outside with her own camera, hands steady. Torres noticed, gave a respectful nod, and kept reading charges. Attempted theft of government property, obstruction of a federal investigation, interference with national security assets. Bethany's only reply was a sputter of HOA jargon that died in her throat when she spotted the surveillance van door sliding open. Special Agent Alvarez emerged, DHS windbreaker rippling in the morning breeze, holding a sealed evidence bag. Inside, the graffiti rag Maya used to wipe the Jeep. DNA, latent prints, the works. Alvarez handed the bag to a tech and turned to Bethany. "Ma'am, you triggered an interagency security protocol. That means every tamper attempt is cataloged." He pointed to the mirror camera, still winking red. "Congratulations, you're now the star of a multi-state briefing." Across the street, Carl burst from their front door, necktie hanging, cell phone glued to his ear. He barreled toward the scene, waving his council badge like a magic wand. "This is a misunderstanding. Release her at once." Torres didn't bother looking up. "Step back, sir. You're contaminating evidence." Carl lunged. Two marshals intercepted, firm but polite. One recited a fresh Miranda. Carl's jaw slackened. He wasn't under arrest yet, but the implication hung in the air like ozone before a storm. Squad cars rolled in next, lights silent but spinning blue. Local PD had watched Bethany bulldoze their authority for years. Now they were background extras in a federal film, happy to let higher powers handle the takedown. Officers taped the driveway, logged statements, and shrugged when reporters arrived. It took 30 minutes for the first satellite truck to park by the hydrangeas. Maya stayed on the perimeter, capturing everything. The marshals let her because they already knew. Her footage mirrored their own. Redundancy is gold in court. She filmed Bethany loaded into a black SUV, doors slamming like punctuation marks. The neighbor kids across the cul-de-sac started a slow clap their parents couldn't quite silence. Then the second wave hit. FBI tech teams fanned into the clubhouse with laptops and evidence crates. ExecSafe's SUV was impounded. Its onboard dash cam contained logged routes matching every midnight patrol. Morrison and Associates tried to invoke client privilege. A judge signed a no-knock warrant 2 hours later. By noon, servers were seized, and the PR firm's office lights flickered out. Carl's City Hall allies smelled smoke and scattered. Council members released statements condemning unfortunate overreach. The mayor tweeted support for the investigation, deleting old photo ops with Carl. That afternoon, a state ethics committee opened an inquiry into zoning kickbacks. Carl's phone buzzed nonstop. Each vibration etched deeper panic lines around his eyes. News anchors set up on corners where Bethany once measured grass with rulers. Microphones jabbed at residents. Did you know your HOA was targeting military families? Tom Henderson, medals pinned to his cardigan, stepped forward. We suspected. Now we have proof, and we're done being quiet. Behind him, veterans unfolded a giant flag across the lawn, 13 stripes snapping defiantly in the breeze. In Grandma's kitchen, Maya brewed coffee for federal agents reviewing her evidence wall. Sticky notes, arrows, timestamps. Her once humble binder had exploded into a command center plastered across floral wallpaper. Assistant U.S. Attorney Delgado slid a printout onto the table, a preliminary indictment checklist: embezzlement, wire fraud, civil rights conspiracy, RICO predicate acts. He tapped Bethany's name, then Carl's. We're adding both to the same tree, he said. Organized crime isn't just kneecaps and cigars. It's folks in polos stealing homes. Maya glanced at the framed photo of Grandma Rosa smiling beside a platter of tamales. She always said bad people count on good people staying polite. Delgado smiled. Polite time, over. That evening, the community center overflowed for the scheduled emergency vote Bethany had planned. The recall petition became a victory banner taped to the podium. With Bethany in custody, residents elected an interim board on the spot, unanimous paper ballots waving like liberation leaflets. They chose Maya president pro tem until formal elections. She accepted with a quiet nod, gavel trembling in her hand. Outside, dusk painted the sky orange-purple. News drones buzzed overhead, capturing the line of federal vehicles departing Willowbrook. Evidence secured, suspects in chains, power dynamics inverted. The Jeep, unmoved, unbowed, sat gleaming under porch light, padlock replaced, security chain intact. I watched the final feed from a forward operating base, sand swirling around the screen. Half a world away, my sister had orchestrated a takedown worthy of any task force op. The turning point we'd waited for had arrived, powered not by bullets but by documents, cameras, and neighbors finding their courage. I sent Maya a single text: Grandma's proud, rest tonight. She replied with a photo: Bethany's confiscated bolt cutters tagged evidence. Caption: trophies belong on walls, not driveways. The war wasn't over, but momentum had shifted forever. Federal court dates loomed, development deals vaporized, and every military family in Willowbrook slept easier beneath a new flag of accountability. Bethany spent her first night in county lockup pacing a 6x8 concrete box, demanding organic meals and threatening lawsuits. The booking deputy just slid her a carton of powdered eggs and closed the viewing port. Meanwhile, the arrest video replayed on every local affiliate, the clip of her bolt cutters freezing on screen while a marshal read charges. By breakfast, the hashtag #BoltCutterBait trended higher than the weather. Maya woke to more notifications than a semester's worth of parent emails. Veterans groups applauded, military spouses offered casseroles, and a senator's aide requested a briefing on systemic HOA harassment. Still, for every thank you there was a hiss, blocked numbers leaving voicemails about traitor teachers and government overreach. She forwarded each threat to the marshals. They logged case numbers with casual efficiency. Harassment after a federal arrest qualifies as witness intimidation. Another nail for the indictment. Carl tried damage control from his leather office chair, issuing a statement that Bethany's arrest was an unfortunate misunderstanding. But when investors heard DHS raided Morrison and Associates, his phone stopped ringing. City Hall scheduled an emergency session to discuss his conduct. The ethics committee wanted answers about zoning favors and campaign donations routed through dummy LLCs. Carl drafted resignations, then tore them up, chasing one last miracle call that never came. Bank accounts froze next. A federal forfeiture order locked $184,000 of HOA funds and $612,000 from Carl's development firm, suspected embezzlement and fraud. Automatic payments halted. Landscapers and pool services walked off the job by noon. For the first time in Willowbrook history, grass grew past regulation length, and nobody dared quote the rule book. Maya, now interim president, declared a moratorium on fines and opened the clubhouse for an emergency truth and reconciliation meeting. Folding chairs filled with residents clutching coffee and curiosity. She stepped to the mic, voice steady. Our goal isn't revenge, it's repair. She introduced an audit team, 2 CPAs volunteering pro bono, plus Sergeant Williams on a video call explaining how restitution would work. When Meyer announced any recovered money would create a scholarship fund for service family kids, the room erupted in applause that rattled the HVAC vents. At the pretrial detention hearing, Bethany shuffled in wearing county orange and indignation. Her lawyer argued she was a devoted community leader and posed no flight risk. The prosecutor countered with 2 words, federal espionage. He played the night vision clip of her scanning the Jeep, followed by forensic reports linking her fingerprint to the graffiti rag. The judge slammed his gavel, bail denied. Bethany's gasp echoed off wooden panels. She was remanded until trial. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Carl. Cameras caught the moment he snapped, barking, "Talk to my attorney," before sprint-walking to a waiting Tesla. That clip aired next to archival footage of him boasting about unbreakable community integrity. Late that night, Carl met privately with federal agents, offering documents in exchange for leniency. He slid over a flash drive detailing forged lien templates, kickback spreadsheets, and emails showing Bethany coaching other HOA presidents on military extraction strategies. Cooperation noted, indictment expanded. Back in Willowbrook, transformation took physical shape. Veterans organized a cleanup day, trimming hedges, repainting mailboxes, planting flags along the entrance boulevard. Kids chalked thank you soldiers across sidewalks once patrolled by clipboard bullies. The Jeep sat in the driveway, a trophy now, chain gleaming beneath a new motion-activated floodlight. The school district held a surprise assembly. 6th graders waved paper flags while the principal presented Meyer a plaque for exemplary civic leadership. Parents who once whispered now stood and cheered. A local bakery donated sheet cakes reading "Welcome Home," tank in buttercream. 2 weeks later, I flew stateside on compassionate leave, desert dust still clinging to boots. I stepped out of the rideshare and saw Grandma's house draped in red, white, and blue bunting, neighbors lining the walk with hand-painted signs. We stand with Maya. She met me at the porch, eyes rimmed red but shining fierce. We hugged so hard the world narrowed to cedar siding and the smell of vanilla candles she'd relit in Grandma's honor. That evening we hosted a porch meeting, no secrets, no fear. Maya outlined new bylaws, automatic military exemptions, mandatory transparency, quarterly audits open to residents. Every hand went up in approval. Tom Henderson proposed a final motion, convert Bethany's now vacant home, seized under forfeiture, into a Veterans Resource Center. The vote was unanimous, cheers echoing into summer dusk. News of the turnaround spread, sparking similar recall drives in 3 neighboring HOAs. What started as one Jeep and a bolt cutter had become a statewide reckoning. Legislators drafted the Rodriguez bill, mandating federal oversight for any HOA actions against active-duty families. As stars bloomed overhead, Maya lifted a mason jar of iced tea. "To Grandma," she said, voice soft but sure. I raised mine. To Grandma, to justice, to a neighborhood learning the true meaning of community. The battle had been ugly, but the rebuild, this part, felt beautiful. And somewhere in a detention center, Bethany scrolled through news on a communal television, watching everything she'd built, through fear and forged documents, be repurposed for the very people she tried to exile. Trial dates loomed, plea deals crumbled, and the suburb she once ruled was blooming into something she never understood. A place where service and sacrifice weren't eyesores, they were the foundation. 8 months later, the federal courthouse thrummed like a beehive as cameras clicked, badges flashed, and jurors filed in with guarded faces. I sat beside Maya in the gallery, our hands threaded, hearts steady. The government had spent weeks laying out the architecture of Bethany's empire, Fake liens, forged bylaws, laundered dues, intimidation contracts. The bolt cutter footage played frame by damning frame. When the prosecutor displayed a blown-up photo of Grandma Rosa smiling beneath a headline about military eyesores, an audible growl rippled through the veterans' row. Bethany never testified. Her lawyers advised silence, but the evidence shouted loud enough. DNA on the rag, GPS pings from her midnight trespasses, Carl's flash drive of incriminating emails. Closing arguments lasted 47 minutes. The jury deliberated for 43. Guilty on all counts: federal theft, civil rights conspiracy, mail fraud, obstruction, and attempted espionage. Carl followed 2 days later, accepting a plea: 6 years and forfeiture of every property linked to his shady development fund. Sentencing day smelled like rain on asphalt and fresh justice. Judge Morales looked Bethany dead in the eyes. "You waged psychological warfare on the very people who protect your freedoms," he said, voice granite. 8 years, no parole. She wilted as shackles clinked, mascara trails marking the end of her kingdom. Carl received 5+ supervised release. The courtroom door thundered shut behind them both. Outside, reporters swarmed Maya. She spoke softly, firmly. "This isn't about revenge. It's about boundaries, legal, moral, human. No one should worry about an HOA more than an enemy overseas." Her words aired that night in every time zone. Restitution funds poured into the newly formed Rosa Rodriguez Scholarship, launching tuition for 12 military kids the first semester. Bethany's seized Lexus financed the Veteran Resource Center, now humming with counseling groups and resume workshops. The house she once decorated with "no parking" signs wore a new banner: WLLOWBROOK welcomes our heroes. Spring arrived early, coaxing bluebonnets across front lawns finally free from ruler tyranny. The Jeep, still government issue, sat unchained now, kids posing for selfies beside its task force decals. On Saturdays, I lifted the hood and answered their rapid-fire questions about radios and hidden cameras. "Tools only matter," I told them, "when you use them to protect, not control." Maya's life changed most. She traded her classroom for a bigger one: conference stages, advocacy panels, congressional hearings. Lawmakers passed the Rodriguez bill with bipartisan thunder, requiring any HOA nationwide to secure federal clearance before citing active-duty members. Maya addressed the House committee in a navy blazer and Grandma's crucifix necklace, her voice crystal. Service to country should never be a zoning violation. The chamber erupted in applause that shook even stone-faced senators. Grandma's house became command central for our nonprofit, Valor Homewatch. We field calls from Alaska to Florida: soldiers, sailors, Guard members fighting mini Bethanies. The kitchen table is now a war map of pins and highlighters, but the oven still warms tamales on late nights. Sometimes I swear I smell Grandma's cinnamon coffee urging us on. On Memorial Day, we held Willowbrook's first Freedom Fair. Food trucks, face paint, a stage draped in flags. Tom Henderson led the color guard. Mrs. Patterson, 92, cut the ribbon with ceremonial shears bigger than her forearm. Children raced along chalked hopscotch paths while their parents toured the resource center Bethany funded by force of karma. Local band played country classics. Dusk settled in gold and pink. During the silent remembrance, Maya read the names of every service member once fined for non-compliance. Families lit candles, and wind carried their glow across streets no longer patrolled by fear. I stood beneath the oak where Bethany had once taped her flyers. Its branches rustled like applause. Later, sitting on the porch swing, Maya and I shared the quiet. Crickets chirped, porch light haloed the Jeep, and somewhere a sprinkler misfired, no ticket forthcoming. She asked if I missed the adrenaline of field work. I glanced at the neighborhood stitched back together by perseverance. "This was the hardest op I've run," I said, "and the most worthwhile." She smiled. "Grandma would say you did it the right way." We toasted with mason jars of hibiscus tea. Above us, the flag on the new aluminum pole snapped sharp under moonlight, each crack a reminder. Liberty isn't handed down by HOA covenants or city ordinances. It's defended daily, sometimes in deserts, sometimes in driveways. As the night deepened, headlights swept up the street, families returning from the fair, waving as they passed. No one averted eyes, no one hurried indoors. Community, once hostage to a clipboard queen, now thrived on shared resilience. I exhaled, letting the cool air fill spaces where rage once lived. Bethany's bolt cutters lay in a shadow box inside the resource center, plaque reading, "When power abuses, people unite." Visitors press fingers to the glass, take selfies, and leave understanding that justice isn't loud, it's persistent. Our story travels further each day, but its heart stays right here. A modest house, a brave teacher, a stubborn soldier, and a neighborhood that remembered what a neighborhood is supposed to be. And if any fresh tyrant thinks about testing those bonds, they'll find more than a padlock in their way. They'll face a community forged in the lesson of one disastrous snip. So wherever you're watching from, stand up to bullies, record everything, rally your neighbors, and believe that the law, when wielded with patience and courage, can turn the smallest driveway into the front line of freedom. Drop a comment with your own story, share this video so others know they're not alone, and hit subscribe for the next victory waiting to be told. Until then, keep your chains strong, your cameras rolling, and your hearts unbreakable.